What is up? Serpent here, and today we're going to be installing the Serpent.AI framework on a fresh Windows 10 machine. Not very often do I get the chance to work with a totally blank / fresh machine, but I just recently built a PC, and that gives us a perfect opportunity. A lot of people were asking for a video guide on how to install the Serpent.AI framework. So we're going to be doing a full installation, both the framework and the optional components, and we're going to get started right away. So if you go on the GitHub page, most of the information that we're going to be using today for this is actually located in the Wiki. You can go and click the Wiki. A lot of people don't even know that there's a Wiki, but there is. You go to the Wiki, it has a lot of information. Some of it is a little out of date at this point. We're working on that. One thing that is, however, pretty up to date is the installation guides for multiple platforms. So we're going to click the Windows installation guide here, and we're going to be following along with this here. Right? So if you're a very, I don't know, like if you can just like pretty much like you're good at following instructions, written instructions, perhaps you don't even need this video. You can just go and visit the Wiki. I will be putting down the actual URL to this in the description of the video. All right, so let's go. And just before I do anything, like let me show you, like this is bare bone Windows. Like there's not much on this. There's, I think I have the GPU. You know, I have like the NVIDIA drivers. And I have some crap, like all the basic like drivers, some basic software like, you know, like browsers, Steam, and so on and so forth. But there's nothing like pre-installed. There's no history on this machine. So we are doing a bare bone setup, and as such, you know, like the instructions here can be verified to be working. All right, so let's go. Initial requirements. Well, Windows 7 and up, I think that's an easy one. Check. We are on Windows 10 right now. If you're on Windows 7, I mean, I have never really tested it, but reports from other people have been that it's the whole setup is not a whole lot different. It's not that different. Like there might be, I think there's like at some stage like there is a bit of a different thing, but if anything, it's gonna be covered in the Wiki. Next up, we don't even have Python on this system, right? So we're gonna need to set up at least Python. Serpent.AI is a Python 3.6 and up framework. So we are going to need some Pythons on our machine. So the one thing I recommend using on Windows, of course, I don't even know if it would work without that. If you really love to complicate things, you probably can try. And that applies also like if you already have a system Python installed on your Windows machine, your existing Windows machine, because not everyone's going to be starting from scratch. But I really recommend using it, going with Anaconda, the Anaconda distribution here, because getting the, you know, like binaries for NumPy and the SciPy stack on Windows, that's very difficult to get working. You might even need some proprietary software to build these things. So by using Anaconda, it's a bit of a blessing. So here's what we do. If you already have a system Python, you can still install Anaconda side by side. So feel free to do that. However, I do not recommend that you try to get it working with your other system Python. If you have Anaconda already, be sure to make sure that it's a version that's using Python 3.6, because there are distributions of Anaconda that are on Python 2 and others that are also for Python 3.5, right? So make sure you're using it Python 3.61. Ideally, you would be using the latest distribution, but I'm pretty sure it can probably work like with slightly older distributions of Anaconda, right? So that's going to be the first step. We're going to install this. Everything that's going to be happening in this video is going to be like in a one-shot format, all right? So just no magic of editing or anything. I will say some I will make some mistakes probably, but the whole point is that we're doing it in one go to show that it's possible, right? And it's not that hard to get Serpent.AI working on your Windows box, right? So it actually links you to the right page. The one thing I did do to save some time is perform all the downloads ahead of time, right? Because there are some large-ish files in the dependencies. So I got you know, like I prepared a bit in advance, so we have those files already. So it says like go to, okay, so you click that link for Anaconda, takes you to this page. It says latest version is 5.2, which is pretty recent. See, it's almost June 2018 at the time of this video, at least it is. And then you have choices, 3.6. Like I said, you want to go for that. Probably want to go for the 64-bit installer. And as you can see, it's pretty large. It's a 630 megabytes. So you get that down on your machine. I'm going to try to find them. I think it's downloads. There we go. Anaconda's already here. So that nothing's installed on this box. Like, it's fresh. Like I said, nothing's there. Like, there's no Python right now. So first step, we're going to install Anaconda. Let's go. All right. So of course we agree. Do you want to go for just me or all users? Totally up to you. I think we're fine with just me. If you have a machine with multiple users, you can consider it. But we're probably fine with this. And it gives you a possible path. You can customize that perfectly fine. But I'm also fine with just like in my user having an Anaconda 3. Okay, all right. This option here, and it's caused a lot of problems in the past. It is probably not mandatory, but I highly recommend, even if they say not recommended, unless you already have a system Python, that you add Anaconda to the path environment variable. Right? I do recommend it. They say not recommended, but that's probably because it would mess up existing system Python installations. And then that's also a dangerous one if you want to keep, like, you have already like some system Python stuff running on your machine. You might want to untick that, right? But these options, for the most part, if you're not using Python on your Windows machine at all at the moment, I would recommend like checking both of these. Okay, so we're gonna keep going. It's just gonna install a bunch of crap, so that's gonna take a little while. So yeah, people have been asking for a video guide for quite a while. For me, I would never put it as a priority for two reasons. It was really hard for me to stumble upon like a fresh, bare bones Windows 10 machine with, you know, like a proper GPU and stuff, like not just like a VM. And also, I always thought the wiki was pretty complete, but you know, like there's people that are visual learners, so I think we need to consider those, even though it's in the wiki. You know, I'm adding commentary also, which might not necessarily like be in the wiki. So why would you do a thing? Or, you know, maybe we're going to discover something that's not perfect in the wiki. So this is probably one of the longest installs. We're gonna just have to wait for it. Like I said, like this is pure unedited. I mean, I could technically edit out this part, but you know, like we're patient. We're watching this in one go. We're doing this in one go, right? So this is a huge, like Anaconda is a huge package, and it kind of came along, and I would say it saved. I would say it would be fair to say that it actually saved scientific Python on Windows as an operating system, because it was, sorry, extremely hard to get scientific Python packages to compile on Windows before the advent of Anaconda. So the Anaconda group, essentially what they did is they set out to you know, like make sure they would be able to compile all of these like packages that people consider worthy for scientific computing, including machine learning stuff, right? So after a bunch of years, like it's a big distribution, but it saves you a lot of headaches, right? So that's why we recommend going with this. And the guy that's currently installing extracting right now, NumPy is a big reason. Try compiling NumPy on Windows, and you know, give me an update. Tell me how much you enjoy that process, if you can even pull it off at all, right? So that's one thing. But yeah, this thing is pretty big. We can look at the wiki in the meantime, see if there's any notes. I'm not even following my own instructions. I said like maybe we need. Oh no, it's the Anaconda prompt. We're good. Run the graphical installer. We didn't cheat. The whole point is to prove that the wiki is accurate. We didn't cheat, right? So the next stuff is going to have to be done with a prompt once we're done installing. So a lot of people think that installing Serpent.AI, like the framework, is pretty involved, but you'll see, we'll be done. Like we're actually like going to wait for this, which is perhaps like not necessary. Feel free to skip ahead, by the way. You're probably watching this as a static video. Feel free to skip ahead if you want to, if you don't want to hear me blabbing about that stuff. But the whole point is to show that even with the wait or the delay installing the framework, you can have a working framework in a very reasonable amount of time, I would say, considering all the power that it's going to give you. But yeah, there's a lot of files in there. Jesus. So see, I was kind of hesitating. I was like, do we kind of like install? But then I was like, it kind of takes away the whole like, let's do the install from scratch. So we're gonna just like be patient and wait for this. We could start working on the next step while it's installing. Maybe that would be smart, but also confusing if people are skipping ahead in the video. So we're not going to do that. We're just going to wait. And if you're really annoyed, like you can just skip ahead. So yeah, man, like I will share that working on Windows was pretty new for me as a person that's been doing like data, like engineering and machine learning stuff in the recent years. So it was pretty new for me. I've never really worked on Windows. And when I set out to, like start building stuff that's gonna eventually was gonna shape up the Serpent.AI framework, I found it well interesting to work with. I feel like there's a big misconception about like having your Python libraries, for example, be compatible with Windows. People think it's like, oh man, it's like you don't do that. Like it's too complicated. Just get on Linux. But honestly, getting it to work with Windows and even providing Windows-specific functionality is not that hard. So if there's one thing I would encourage people to do is give it a shot. If you have access to a Windows box, and you're building, like Python libraries that you're making available, like open source, they're available on PyPI. Give it a shot. Give it a shot. It's probably not as hard as you think. It's probably not as hard as you think. And in this specific case, like we had a good motivator, right? Because of course, Windows is still a very, very good home for video games and modern video games, right? So it was a good incentive to kind of have like our Windows, the Windows part of the framework be excellent. And it kind of is. We're almost done here. We're going to be able to move along. This is probably one of the longest things just because of the install, not because of the complexity of the manipulations. My hands are totally off the keyboard right now. I'm not really doing anything. Just blabbing on. But yeah, this is a big boy. Sorry, we're going to be done real soon. And then you'll see, like from that point on, it gets like really, really easy. One thing we can check, kind of prepare for, is go to environment variables and see the work that it's doing in there. We're going to wait until the install is done, but we're going to want to double check that everything's in there. Then we're going to check that, we're going to go in the command prompt, see that it can actually access like Python, that it's using the right Python version, and so on and so forth. So we'd have a bit of validation to do before we do anything else. And that is optional, but of course, like if you validate for sanity purposes, it's probably better. Just want to make sure that what we've accomplished so far is just a good habit to get into. And this is probably going to be a video, like the first video, probably one of the most like tedious ones. But I do plan to start working on shorter, more concise, to the point videos to show like how to perform certain operations with the framework. I think it's a great medium, like video. So as long as there's always like text, like instructions to go along like side by side, because some people don't like videos, and I get that. I'm not a big fan myself, but I totally understand the attraction. All right, so it's doing that. I don't know what's doing right now. It's probably like setting up some stuff. It's almost done. So yeah, this one is a big boy to install for sure. But what it gives you for free from there, and I'm guessing like Microsoft has it's I don't know if they're like a big sponsor or if they've acquired, but they were actually pitching the install of VS Code, which is interesting. I've never really noticed that in their setup. Maybe it's just in 5.2 that it showed up, but first time I see this. Anyway, not a problem. VS Code is a pretty good piece of software. All right, so we're done with this. Finish. Great. Thank you very much. Let's go and inspect our path variable. It shouldn't be too daunting because it's a pretty fresh box. We did install it as a user, so we're expecting to find the Anaconda 3 entries for our user and not like in our whole like whole system. And they seem to be there, right there. That's nice. We might want to keep this. Takes a second. Let's see what it installed. We have this guy here, the Anaconda Prompt, and this is what I would recommend people work with. You can set it up in other places. You can even set it up in, let's say, like Visual Studio Code. If you like you use the terminal on the right, you could make it work with Anaconda, for example. We're not going to do that today in this video, but it's something that you could do technically. So for now, we're going to stick to the Anaconda Prompt, like this. All right, so when I open this, of course, like I might need to make this a little bigger for you guys to see. So just give me a sec. Fresh box. Professional video, by the way. All right, let's make this a little bigger so people can see. Like, let's say 20 consoles is fine. Maybe just this is good. There you go. Hopefully it's big enough. All right, so base on the left here, that's your current Conda environment, and what's on the right is your actual path. I think at this point we just wanted to make sure that Python is working before we do the other commands. So can we sort of like just like run Python? I can't type Python. All right, 365 Anaconda. All right, that's a good sign. That's a good sign. So we got that there. That's good. And as long as this is working, like, do we have pip, for example? Seems like we do. Nice. And we also have conda in scope, which is great. I think we can move on to the next. We're going to leave this thing open, and we're going to move on to the next commands. All right, so the next thing, we need to create an environment for Serpent. That is sort of optional. But if you're going to be working with other Python projects on that machine, it's probably better. This is pretty much like a virtual environment. So I do recommend making a separate one for your Serpent.AI stuff. Kind of like the same pros as creating a virtual environment, right? So we're just going to drop this in here, conda create --name Serpent, and we're going to specify that it needs to use the Python 3.6 version in that environment. All right, so we're going to run this. It's going to take a second. There we go. Proceed. Yes. And it's going to extract a bunch of packages. Okay, so when you install Anaconda, it just like installs the entire distribution on your box. When you create an environment, you don't necessarily like create an environment that has everything included in that distribution. So they have like local cached copies. So this is why we normally try to conda install before like doing a pip install on something, just to see if they have something that's you know, like a proper version that's shipped with Anaconda. But when you create a new environment, you're not using the entire thing, right? So if we, for example, once we're done here, and we say conda, because that's the next thing we need to do anyways. We're going to say conda activate Serpent, right, like this. And when we go pip freeze, for example, you'll see that it's pretty empty. Not much there. Some windows, you know, like specific things, but it's pretty empty. So we're not installing the entire like Anaconda environment. We're just like creating a minimal environment here. Next step, very, very, very important, a big source of confusion, I would say, that I've seen, because I've run a help channel for Serpent.AI for quite a while, and I've seen a lot of repeated issues. This part is very confusing for some reason. I'm gonna have to figure out a way to better word it, but I'm asking you to create a Serpent, a folder, a directory for Serpent.AI, right? Where we're gonna do the actual like, installation and everything. Sorry. All right. Why do we do this, and what's the source of confusion, right? So let's say we start by making a directory here. It's a fresh Windows box, so we don't really have anything. We're gonna make a projects directory, and we're gonna go to it, and in there we're gonna make a Serpent. I'm gonna call it Serpent Projects. You can call it Serpent.AI. You can call it what you want, but I'm gonna call it Serpent Projects in my case, just because it's gonna drive the point home a little better. So let's make this directory. Let's go to it, Serpent Projects, right? And then we are in our Serpent environment, as denoted by the brackets on the left-hand side of the prompt here. And that's all we're gonna have to do for now. But why is this a big deal? And why do you need to pay attention to this? Because everything else in the wiki from that point on is going to assume that you're running it in this directory. All right, so that's very important. And also, the source of confusion is that people, once they do the setup, sometimes a lot of issues arose because they were trying to run Serpent stuff outside of it. So here's what I'll say that's very, very key. If there's one takeaway, if you're following the wiki that you might not get in the wiki, this directory is your working directory for Serpent.AI. It's your workspace, right? So everything that you do with Serpent.AI will be in that directory. All right. So even if you Serpent setup and everything's set up and going good to go, if you try to run Serpent commands outside of this structure or this working directory, it's not going to work out. Right. So something to keep in mind. But now we can move on. we can move on. All right, so third-party dependencies, not a whole lot, not too bad. We have Redis, right? Redis, and sometimes people are a little confused or surprised at the use of Redis, but when you understand how Serpent.AI works, I would say the primary like piece of data or information, Serpent.AI is a visual, right? It's a framework that uses visual information, uses captured game frames or regions of game frames, and in the end, like these game frames can be represented as a series of bytes, right? They can go from like an array representation to a series of bytes. So what's really good to store like series of bytes, well, an in-memory store like Redis, where you can kind of make like queues and lists and stuff like that with bytes, is a perfect solution for that sort of stuff. And you know, like Redis is really good. It's pretty write optimized, right? So it's a great solution for that sort of stuff. So we capture frames, and then we're gonna store them in a buffer in Redis where they can be consumed by our agents. So this is, for the most part, why we use Redis in the Serpent.AI framework. Now, Redis. If you know Redis, you might be like, but Serpent, there's no Redis version for Windows. And you would be correct. However, Microsoft used to maintain a port way back. It has been abandoned since, but the version they abandoned it at is more than enough, right, for all the Redis commands that we're going to be using in Serpent.AI. So I do recommend using that instead of like running it in like WSL on Windows 10, which is another option, or a Docker container even. If you're a big fan of Docker, you can go for it. Just make sure that you have like a Redis that's locally accessible, you know, and you'll be fine. But for for most people, I recommend like going through with this here, right? So what we're gonna do is go to Microsoft Archive/Redis on GitHub. What you want to do is find the releases, right here, and you get the latest one, 3.2.1. Get the MSI file, this one here, the 5.8 megabytes. Download that. I have downloaded it before, so it's right here, and we're going to be installing Redis. All right, so what do we have to say for us? And this is going to get installed as a Windows service, which is pretty good. It's pretty easy to maintain. All right, license agreement, program files, Redis. Add the Redis, and okay, this is not checked by default. You probably want to do that because if you want to use, for example, Redis CLI in the command line to do some Redis operations, it won't find it unless it's in the path, right? So you can add this to your path, your system, you know, like your environment variables. The port, don't touch that. Exception to Windows Firewall, sure, why not? You don't want to add a memory limit, not interesting. Okay, so Serpent.AI, two things with Redis. The use of Redis doesn't really require persistence. We're going to get to that like really soon. And the other thing is it won't use a lot of memory. You know, like it might use, like, depending on how you set things up. Of course, it's always in the hands of the user. It's a framework, but I don't think you're going to like see cases where it goes above, you know, like let's say like 1 gig of RAM or something like that in Redis, right? So setting a max memory would just cause like exceptions and stuff. And since like it's unlikely to go out of control, I don't recommend people set a memory limit on this thing. And then that's it. That's all they want. Okay, we're gonna get a confirmation dialog, sure. And there you go, done. Pretty easy, right? We are gonna intervene, however, and change a slight thing that is not in the wiki, I believe, but it is it's a nice optimization for Serpent. So if you can do it, I recommend it. Let's start by finding. Let's go to VS Code here. We're going to open a file from the file system. We are going to go and grab in our C drive where we install Redis. I think it was program files Redis. And you want to go and get these config files, rediswindows.conf and rediswindowsservice.conf. We're going to open this. And for both of them, we're going to scroll down until we find that section here that has the save stuff, right? So I did say, like, all the data that Serpent uses for any feature, nothing requires persistence. So if you know that all your data is ephemeral like this, there's no point in having Redis trying to persist the state to disk, right? So normally you would want this in Redis because if you shut it down, if something bad happens, it can recover from the latest dump. And then with that save command, that stuff here, you can say like, oh, you know, like save every 900 seconds when at least one record is changed, or save every 300 seconds. Let's I don't know if we can boost this up in terms of font. Doesn't look like it. But you know, like you can control like the behavior of the persistence, the dumping. So a lot of stuff that needs to be, perhaps what needs to be understood here is that every time you want to persist to disk, it is going to try to fork an entire other process efficiently, like effectively, like doubling the RAM usage just to be able to write to disk, right? So that process is sort of expensive, and if you leave it on, you don't turn it off, it's going to complain because I didn't do it as an admin, right? So that it is in an admin folder, owned folder. So that, there we go, saved it. So if you don't remove this, it's sort of optional, but if you don't remove this, right, what's going to happen is you might notice eventually some hitching, because we are writing a lot to Redis. So in your experiments, you might notice some hitching because of that, you know, like that forking of the process and dumping on the disk, writing on the disk. So it's very, very small hitching. It's not a big thing, but since it needs to fork the process entirely, it will sort of like use up resources on your system and cause like some hitching in your game or your capture or your experiment overall. So very, very, very easy. You just comment out these save blocks in the 2 config files. You save them. And then what we're going to do is make sure to restart our Redis service. So you can go to services on Windows. We're going to scroll down to Redis right here. I know this font is a little small. I didn't really like set like bigger aspect ratios or anything for this video. If it's really bad, I apologize. We're going to try to make this better in the future. But yeah, just make sure to restart Redis, the service, so it takes into consideration that new config file that you just put in there, and then you're good to go. If you want to test this out, you can open that Anaconda prompt of yours and go and say Redis CLI, for example, and now see, it actually works because we added our Redis executables to path. We can get some information about like our Redis like server and so on and so forth. So it is good to go. You can kind of confirm that it works this way. So Redis check, awesome. We're gonna go back to our wiki. All right, next one. This is kind of preemptive, but we have to do it because there's some stuff on Python when it tries to build. Not everything is a pre-built binary, unfortunately, when you install from pip or conda. For conda, like that's a lie, like it is actually is, but from pip, not the case. So it's very common on Windows that you pip install something and it fails because it's either not supporting Windows at all, which happens, which I kind of like addressed earlier, or when it does, it is not a precompiled binary, and it needs to build it. So you need some build tools. You need some C++ build tools. So the way I really recommend you do this, because I've tested multiple variants of this to some different, I would say different results. So the one way I've had it always work, you know, like without major issues, is getting the build tools for Visual Studio 2017, and in that installer, making sure that we get whatever's in that list. So that section of the wiki is really, really good. I really recommend you follow it to a T. Once again, as has been tradition so far, I have downloaded at least the installer. But it's a network installer, so I think we're gonna have to wait a bit. I don't think it was possible to get this one in a non-network version. So yeah, this one, like, you might already have some build tools, but still, I highly recommend you take the time to do this, because that's another part where a lot of people are seeing issues, is when they're trying to build some packages that are kind of like dependencies. So, you know, like being like, oh, I'm covered, you know, like Serpent, I'm good, I have these things already, and just skipping that part of the installation process. Trust me, we've been there, we've been supporting Serpent.AI for a while. It's gonna come and bite you in the butt. So I don't recommend people do this. All right, so let's see what we had in as a list. So you're gonna, first of all, tick the Visual C++ build tools here. You're gonna click it like this. And then we need, no perfect place to put it. That sucks. All right, all right. Okay, so Visual C++ build tools core features, that's in there. Okay, version, that's already checked, cool. Redis update. Okay, so the only thing that we are adding, we're gonna untick the other things that are in the optional section. And we are gonna tick where is it? Like the 2015.3. So we need to find this 2015.3.14. This guy, tool set for desktop. That is very important. All right, you don't want to miss out on this part. Now it is a very, very big. It kind of sucks. It is a very, very big download, but we have to do it. Now, thankfully, the internet here is probably going to be good enough to do this while we're recording this video. Yeah, so essentially like the 3 pre-selected options are what you want, plus you untick everything else and you get VC++ 2015.3.14, right? That's what you want. So we're gonna start the download. Oh, okay, the download's a little smaller. It's just, it was showing the disk space, I guess, that was gonna be required to perform this. And believe it or not, we're waiting a lot for install. If you take away the install time for Anaconda and the install time for this, we're almost done installing the core of Serpent.AI. It's really, really easier than people imagine. Like, it's really not that difficult to get started. What we're also going to do in this video is install and tackle the optional modules. So there's, to keep the installation pretty simple, I would say, for users, what I did with the framework is I isolated a core, you know, that can do like some basic stuff like sending inputs to game, capturing frames, stuff like that. So a minimal core of Serpent.AI, and then you set that up first, and you know, like you iron out your issues with that, and then once you're ready to kind of just like move on, or you encounter like some specific functionality, you want to do some GPU accelerated, you know, like deep learning with Serpent.AI, then at that point in time you can install the module or set up the module for machine learning. All right, so you don't have to do everything in one go. You can focus on just the minimal core first, get that working, play around with it, and once you're ready for some more, then you can install the other modules. I think it's still probably better to install everything in one go if you're confident about it, just because then you don't have to, you know, like go back and say, oh yeah, shit, I need the, you know, the OCR module for this. But I still think it's a good idea to separate the core from the optional components. We're almost done downloading. Then it's going to spend a little bit of time installing that stuff. It's almost done. I think it was installing in parallel, which is great. Good stuff. There you go. All right, that's smart. Smart installer was downloading components and installing stuff in parallel. I love this. Thank you. Right, so now it says that it's installed, and we won't really be able to tell for sure. I mean, we could look at our, I guess, like environment variables. If we're lucky, we could probably see some entries for that stuff here. So is it here or in our system-wide? It's probably system-wide. So if you go and look at path system-wide, are we going to see anything that has to do with build tools? Maybe not. Maybe not. As long as it can find them, that's fine. As long as it can find them when we're, let's see, Redis got added here. As long as it can find them when it's building our stuff, that's good enough. That's good enough. All right. And finally, for that minimal first, you know, like the core of the framework, we're at the point where we are ready to install Serpent.AI, right? So you're going to go back to an Anaconda prompt. Okay, very important step here if you're following like to the letter, to a T, what we're doing here. Very important, okay? You do not want, if you have open prompts at this point, you need to shut them down and kind of like go back. Okay, the reason for this is that in Windows, like path changes to your path, like environment variable are not necessarily like they're not reflected right away. So the simplest way, you can either like pipe in like a bunch of commands to rescope your command line you're currently open, or you can just open a new one, right? And that's what we're gonna do. We're just gonna open a new one, go back to our Serpent projects, make sure that we use our Anaconda activate Serpent, and then we are good. And the next step in the wiki says to run pip install Serpent.AI, so we're gonna do just that. Pip install Serpent. Are we doing proper cap? Yeah, let's do proper capitalization. I guess highly that matters for pip. And there we go. All right. So you might be, well, huh, that was easy. Why all this preparation? Well, not really. This is this is not the true final install of Serpent.AI. There's still stuff that you need to do in there. This is the kind of like the common core, and then there is a system or OS specific rather part to the install that is going to be done with Serpent space. Because now at this point in time you have a Serpent executable. If you just type Serpent in your command line, see, now you get Serpent.AI with the version. Of course, the version that you see there will be different in the future. I'm actually working really hard on the next version, which is going to contain a lot of new stuff, right? So don't worry if you don't see that version. But then it just like at least shows you that the Serpent, you know, like command actually works. And then you need to run Serpent Setup as per the wiki, right? And this is a little more involved. So you Serpent Setup. There's beautiful ASCII heart. If we actually stretch this, you might get lucky. No, it's gone. And it's gone. All right, so it's going to be installing new packages now, and a lot of these packages are specific for Serpent.AI to work on the Windows operating system, and this is why it's not just a pip install. It's a two-step process. You can get the minimal stuff, the cross-platform stuff, set up or installed with just like the pip install, and then use Serpent Setup, and based on the OS that it finds, it's going to do different things, right? So now it's setting up for our Windows box. You can see it's preparing some packages like scikit image, for example. It's getting them from Conda, which should be local caches, and not because we installed the full distribution. So it should be getting like specific versions from the Anaconda distribution that we have. It says downloading, however, so I don't know. Who knows? Who knows? I'm also scared that it seems to be kind of stuck right now. Are we losing like internet as we do this? No, we're good. This guy is just hiccuping a bit. I don't know. Oh, it just moved. Yeah, we're good. We're good. It's just a little slow. I guess it's installing. I mean, it's Qt, right? So there's probably a lot of stuff in there. We're gonna give it a sec. It seems to have unblocked. Got a little worried there. NumPy, sweet. And see, the versions are not too far behind. They're actually pretty good. So this is why you want to use Anaconda. They're not going to be like the latest like minor revision, but they're definitely good enough to work with. You're not going to feel like you're using like old software at all when you do this. All right. So Conda is a little on the slow side. It just like gets this stuff and installs it, but this is all like custom for Windows, right? See, like you won't have any of the Anaconda stuff on Linux or Mac, for example, and this is why you're running the Serpent Setup command. So we're just gonna have to give it a little time to verify the transaction. Conda is actually a really good package manager, probably way better than pip. It's just you know, like it's a shame because no one gets to use it that much if they're not using the Anaconda distribution. And this is where you could have some issues if you messed up, and this is where it could fail. Technically, it might still fail. No, we did good, right? So high Redis, I saw this in the list. High Redis is one of the packages that typically fails if you browse to the old issues of Serpent.AI. There were a lot of people that were having like build failures. The reason why it worked is because we did that specific build tools setup earlier with the proper options in place. And we also made sure to close out our window and reopen it so we can discover the build tools. And there we go, a successful build, right? So now this is it. Now you have a fully set up core for Serpent.AI at this point. You can do anything. You can set up, for example, I mean, do we want to do, I don't want to get into this like too much. I don't want to do like specific examples. We'll keep that for other videos because we have to kind of keep moving. But you could technically, you know, like generate a plugin for a game or a game agent. You could start capturing frames from a game and things like that. Send input to a game and perhaps do some image processing, right? So you have like a good solid core at this point. There are, however, optional modules, which is very clearly indicated in the wiki. If we go and run serpent modules we would have a good idea of what's installed or not. Now, this list might be different by the time you watch this video. You might have more stuff in there, because I know in the next version we are going to have an entry for dashboard here. That is not in the pip release right now. So it might look a little different, but don't worry about it. It just gives you a status of the optional modules when you do Serpent modules like this. So it tells you, you know, like we don't have OCR, we don't have GUI, we don't have ML. And it might say you don't have dashboard, and it gives you how to, it tells you how to do it. If you were trying to do Serpent Setup OCR, like the first thing it would do is not run any installation and tell you to read this section on the wiki, right? Because there is preparation. All right, so look at this. Serpent.AI leverages Tesseract, right? So you might know Tesseract if you've worked with OCR before. So we're going to need an actual install of Tesseract on Windows. So we give you, well, I think the instructions are pretty clear here. You are to go to the wiki here, grab the setup for version 3. In a future version of Serpent.AI, I'm going to explore working with version 4. But for the moment being, we're going to use version 3 because it is the stable still to this day. So we're going to use this, and you know, you're going to install that. So as is tradition in this video, I've downloaded Tesseract OCR setup before. I just have to run the installer. All right, English is fine. Terms, anyone, that's fine. All right, language data, you have English. That's pretty much all you need. If you want specific like other languages, you're using like games in your own language, for example, you could open this and try to find your language. I just don't know if like Serpent.AI stuff like is kind of tuned to use other languages. The OCR module, all I'll say is that I will definitely spend some development time to improve it in the future. So if we find that languages, for example, are not exposed or something like that, we'll make that better. But yeah, do install your language, and if it's a Serpent.AI shortcoming, then we'll fix it in the future. Then you can go. Big K. All right, that's good. Next. README, no, not interested. And that's it, right? So now we're going to do, it added some stuff to the path. So whenever it adds some stuff to the path, and this is another thing I would love as a takeaway for people, because a lot of issues that people encountered were just because they never closed their terminal, their command line in the first place. But yeah, now remember to reopen it to have it see the changes in the path. Otherwise, you'll have some surprises. Now, we don't necessarily need to scope it in Serpent.AI for now. Scratch that. We're going to do it. Activate Serpent. All right. And how do we know if Tesseract is working? Well, what if we were to do Tesseract? Okay, OCR. Did it not add it to the path? All right, that's a possibility, right? I highly doubt I skipped. I was going really, really slowly in the setup. Let's go and see if it added it to the path, because this is an issue that you guys could run into also. It doesn't seem to find it unless I'm dumb and I'm not using the right, I'm not using the right like executable name, which would be, which is definitely possible. Let me read up. Okay, it does say to add the path to Tesseract to your path end variable, so maybe it didn't do that. In fact, it probably didn't, because otherwise it would find. Okay, that's weird. On some other machines, it did it automatically. I'm still very confused by like the state of this. Just know that if it's not in your current path, let's have it be that way. If it's not in your current path, then make sure to add it. So let's see if it. See, Tesseract, nothing got added in terms of Tesseract. So let's make a new entry here and browse to it. We installed it to program files and Tesseract OCR. And I believe the executable is in there. So if we put this in the path like this, it might be a different install folder if you installed it somewhere else. But as long as you're pointing to that Tesseract OCR folder, you should be good. Let's just reopen the Anaconda prompt again real quick. All right, we need a script for this to go faster. This is just in the install. Like normally you don't have to reopen stuff like this. Okay, and then Conda activate Serpent. All right, let's try that again. Tesseract. And I was doing a list languages thing. There you go. All right, now it works. Good. All right, so we needed, in this case, okay, so on some boxes I didn't have to add it to the path. In this specific case, I did. All right, so just remember that it's a needed step. Technically, it's listed out in here. It's just that on a recent install I did on a server, I didn't have to do that part. So it's kind of like a little weird to me, but whatever. Like, let's just make sure that Tesseract runs in your, you know, like in your command line just fine. Once that is working, you can proceed to install the module, right? So you can do Serpent Setup OCR. And then it warns you that says like, hey, before you do anything else, make sure that, like you read that section in the wiki. We did that. We're good. All right, so we're going to install our stuff. And then it says OCR module setup complete. Nice. What if we were to run Serpent modules now? Look at that. Now it says that OCR is installed properly, right? So essentially what I did is I coded up a bunch of like constraints and checks to make sure that everything that is needed to operate with the OCR module in Serpent.AI like is in place, right? So it won't say yes unless you're kind of good to go. The next one is a little more involved, but if you did the setup with the build tools properly up to this point, won't be too bad. The GUI, right? So the GUI, the Serpent.AI framework ships with two GUI applications at the moment. If you're using, you're literally like using this guide as it just like came out on like on YouTube. You might be missing out on the second because it's going to be packaged in the next release, which should happen somewhat soon. But the two applications are a visual debugger where you can kind of send image data to have it be displayed in various buckets, right? So if you want to debug, for example, your image processing, you can see the middle states because you're pushing them out to the visual debugger, and it will show you the images in real time. So that is one application, visual application that is shipping with the framework. The other one is the dashboard. If you don't know what the dashboard is, I can take a second to perhaps like just talk about the dashboard. Just show it. I won't talk about it, but just show it. Right. So see, we have a Serpent.AI experiment here. That is something that you can always watch on Twitch, twitch.tv, Serpent_AI_labs. There's always, for the most part, there's always like an experiment going on here. And whatever you see around the game, that's the dashboard, right? So the next version of Serpent.AI is going to ship with a configurable dashboard for your experiments where you can kind of like send. So there is a streaming API. A lot of people don't know this in Serpent.AI, where you can kind of ship out metrics over the wire. And then this dashboard can kind of like react to it and populate itself. So that is not in the 2018, I think it's .1.2 release, but it will be in the next one as I put the finishing touches on it. All right, back to our GUI stuff. All right. Kivy is the GUI framework. Yes, indeed. I don't think there's anything else. There's no external dependencies, so we can probably just run Serpent Setup GUI. And it's going to try to install Kivy. Kivy is notoriously a pain in the butt to get working, but I believe we finally found a way in the setup to get it working for most people without like extra steps. However, if you've followed the development of Serpent.AI over the last year or so, you know that Kivy has been problematic at times. But like I said, I think we finally have something decent. It says GUI module setup complete. Oh wait, so first step, when that's done, we're going to check our Serpent modules first of all. Yes, it does say yes on the GUI. Let's try to boot up the Serpent visual debugger. And it might not be ready, it might be missing some stuff, but let's give it a shot. Perfect. Awesome. All right, I was a little scared. This is truly like a one-shot video. I have not prepared. There's no like magic editing, and you can tell from all the blabbing that's going on, all the extra time I spent talking on this video. But yeah, there it is, right? So your GUI module is good to go at this point, which is good. And people that have been around for a while will appreciate how easy that was, because it was typically not done like that in the past. All right, and now la pièce de résistance. the ML module. Goddamn, this one's a little bigger. All right, so you have to be ready for this. We're gonna need to install CUDA and stuff like this. So of course, like one of the great attraction to a framework like Serpent.AI is that it also works with deep learning setups, GPU accelerated deep learning setups. In the future versions, it's going to be shipping out also with some baselines for two approaches that are very, very popular right now in reinforcement learning. It's going to be shipping out with Rainbow DQN and PPO, right? However, to take advantage of that, you need to go through the somewhat lengthy setup of having a proper, like CUDA installation, TensorFlow, PyTorch, like whatever you want to use. All that needs to be in place. All right, so let's see what we got in the wiki for this. All right. And it kind of tells you, like, do you actually need this or not? If you're intending to do deep reinforcement learning, you will. Spoilers. All right, so first step, NVIDIA drivers. If you're using this on your gaming PC, there's a very solid chance that this is already there and at the latest version, right? So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. Quick note: if you're using AMD right now, you're not going to be able to do like GPU backed deep learning with the framework. And it's not a framework issue; it's more of an industry issue. Let's just put it that way. So it's out of the hands of the Serpent.AI framework, but you can. So you need a powerful, somewhat powerful consumer NVIDIA GPU to be able to leverage this. All right, so your drivers need to be up to date and installed. That's step one. For most people, like I said, it's going to be taken care of already. Next, we need CUDA. All right, so CUDA needs to be installed properly. And what I'm going to say next, if you are watching this video and following along, I highly recommend you listen very carefully to what's going to follow here, because getting these things wrong will cause a lot of failures. All right, so you have to get the right versions and specific right versions for things to work out of the box. So they give you a link in the wiki. Like go to developer.nvidia.com, CUDA toolkit archive. Let's visit this link. Why did it go to developer.nvidia? Like, what's up with that? There it is. That's weird. I don't know how it went to the wrong page, but whatever. And then it's going to offer, it's going to show you the latest release, 9.2 at the time of this video. You do not want to get that, all right? As weird as it may sound, you do not want to go for CUDA 9.2. You do not want to go for CUDA 9.1. You're going to stick to CUDA 9.0. So why is that? Because it might seem counterintuitive, like, hey, latest release, let's get that. Well, it all comes down to precompiled binaries when it comes to TensorFlow. So that's a big problem on Windows. You want to get your TensorFlow working without like compiling TensorFlow from source, an exercise that I don't recommend people go through. You have to use very specific versions that the distribution like TensorFlow has been compiled against, right? So like what they ship out currently for TensorFlow is stuff that has been compiled against CUDA 9.0. Not using 9.1 and 9.2 will not work. It will just blow up in your face. You'll be left with errors and nothing's going to work, right? So we are going to get CUDA 9.0. They're going to give you an option to, like pick your OS and everything. I already downloaded everything, so you don't need to go through this. We're going to install CUDA because it is not on the system. I also got some patches in there. This is a big file in case you have never seen this before. This is like 1.4 gigabytes. All right, it's actually pretty big. Let's get this running. So once again, 9.0, not 9.1, not 9.2, not anything else that came after that. 9.0 is what you want to go for. Very, very important. Otherwise, you're going to be in compiling TensorFlow from source LAN on Windows. And I can't help you there. If you get to that point, it's possible, but I will not be able to help, and I don't recommend people do that. All right, this is a big one. So of course, like probably like setting up the installer is going to take a second or two. While you're waiting for that, let's keep looking at what's up. You're going to need also to get something that's called CUDNN. So it's a special module for CUDA for deep neural networks, right? So it's like a CUDA deep neural network module. So same thing, developer.nvidia. Oh, it's probably because I clicked this earlier like a dumbass. I realize it now. And then you're gonna go here, and here's the beautiful thing. Have they changed that finally? I was about to complain. I think they did, because I'm not logged in. They used to actually like account gate this thing, so you would need to create an NVIDIA account to get CUDNN. Maybe they fixed it. Maybe people complained enough, but it was really, really bad. You would have to create an NVIDIA account, yet another account, just to get this UDNN stuff. So I was about to show you that you need to create an account, but it looks like it's, at least at the time of this video, publicly accessible. If it is not, just make an account and follow that link again, and you'll get the right link. There we go. All right, we're gonna start installing this guy. And this is the big one. If you can get this one working, you're home free. All right, everything else is going to be super, super smooth. And there is a special step here that you have to be careful with that bit me in the past. And I'm going to share it with you once we get to that point in the installer. But yeah, you want to pay attention to this too. By default, your installer for CUDA will try to install NVIDIA drivers, and it would overwrite your current drivers with a super old version, right? So that is definitely something to be on the lookout for. So instead of doing Express, which would do, like, it actually says it, right? So you need to read stuff in your installers. Installs all CUDA components and overwrites current display driver. Nah, no thank you. So we're gonna go to custom instead, and we're gonna look at what's there. Physics is the same version, so we can just take it out. Driver components, and look at that. See, it would try to install like older drivers. No thank you. No thank you. So that's gone. GeForce Experience, that's gone. And then you also need to untick Visual Studio integration, otherwise it will cause a crash during your install. All right, so all in all, you want CUDA. Everything else is unticked. You want CUDA, and you want everything except for Visual Studio integration. And then you can proceed. And just like, you can accept these. That's fine. You can probably like remember where they are, because we're gonna need to kind of make sure that they're in the path. All right, it's gonna take a little second. So you might be asking, like, what's up? Once we have all of this stuff working, you know, like are we gonna do something cool today in this video? Not really. However, this video is gonna be pretty much a prerequisite for anything else that I will put on YouTube for Serpent.AI. Right? So if you don't perform these steps first, the other stuff that you're gonna see is not gonna work. So it's pretty important that we get this out of the way. See, this video is probably going to be like stretching up to like an hour because of all the talking and installing that we did. But you know, like you're probably going to be done within an hour. Like if you're really, and if you're quicker, perhaps even faster than that. We're just going to try to apply the CUDA patches. Not necessary. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, depending on what your device is. See, this one crashes right away, so that one doesn't work. And you can get that on the same page. Like I didn't show that part, but I got them on the same page as the CUDA download. See, this one will load, so we're gonna let it do its thing. And if it crashes, it's not a big deal. Don't spend like a bunch of time, you know, like just like wondering why. It's okay. It's patches that are sometimes for very specific set of devices or architectures of GPUs. So if you don't have the right one, they just like exit out of the installer. So don't spend too much time like wondering why that patch is not installing for CUDA. You're fine. You're fine. Mm-hmm. There you go. Last patch right there seems to be working too. Let's make sure that let's oversee what we're installing. Okay, that's good. Perfect. All right, CUDA technically should have been added to the path. and should be good to go. Now CUDNN, I seem to see the wrong version here. I don't know what happened. I think I got the wrong one. So just to do the exercise again, in case you're following along, we're going to go back to our wiki. It's going to talk about the CUDNN archive. And you have to get the specific version, right? You have to get the right one. 7.05 for CUDA 9.0, because 9.0 is what we install. Don't go for 8. 8 is available. Same problem. CUDNN needs to be for a specific version in pre-compiled binaries that you're going to get for TensorFlow. So if you get 8, it's not going to work. It's not going to pan out. All right, it's not going to work for you. Now you land on this page, and you have to find it. So we have CUDNN 7.05 for CUDA 9.0. That is the one, and we're going to grab the one for Windows 10 here. Membership required. There you go. Don't say I didn't warn you. All right, I think I have my password manager running, so we should be good. But yeah, you need to create an NVIDIA account. God damn. I might add an annotation to the video to say that you need to create it. Oh, you're supposed to work. Don't do this. There you go. All right, thank you for. All right, we're in. We're gonna go back to. Oh, and if you saw my name and you're like, oh my god, a leak, don't worry about it. Like, my name is public on GitHub, right? So we're not worried about that part. But we are worried that we lost our wiki. Let's bring this back up. Just give me a sec. Windows installation guide. There it is. There it is. All right. Thank you. So what they did is, instead of it's even sneakier. See, I was about to praise NVIDIA for this. What they did is even sneakier. They used to not even show you the CUDNN archive because they said you need an account. Now they show you it, like they show you the thing, and then when you're about to get your download, they say like, no, you need an account for this. There it is, CUDNN 9. Okay, so I did get the wrong one then. I got the one from for CUDA 8 by accident, I believe. There we go. All right, so let's get rid of CUDNN 8. Okay, so how do we work with this? Open up a new file explorer, find your CUDA installation. It might be in program files, like for 64-bit, NVIDIA GPU computing toolkit. Right, there it is, CUDA 9.0. When you get to the directory that has bin, doc, extras, include, stuff like that, stop. We're gonna open this archive. We can open it with just like Windows, that's gonna be fine. All right, and see how it has CUDA? You just go in, and you will just drag and drop everything in there. All right, so we're just going to be adding new files. It's not going to overwrite anything. It's just going to be adding new files to those directories. All right, so that's all you need to do. Perfect. All right. Now CUDNN has been added to CUDA that way. We're going to run a bunch of little tests real quick. Let's go back to our Anaconda prompt. For this one, we don't need to go to Serpent.AI for now, at least. Let's make sure that nvcc -- version will actually return the version of CUDA. There it is. All right, so you want to type nvcc -- version to test it. And then you will see that it is release 9.0, which is the one we want. Perfect. That is a good sign. Let's go to our environment variables, even though we know that it's in the path because it worked. Right, so you can go to path again and you'll see, you know, hey, there's your CUDA stuff. There's one thing that's not going to work with libcudnn. You need to go to your path ext, right? So what that is the extensions in Windows that are considered that are going to be discovered through the path. And we do need to edit this to add. So you're going to add ;.dll to this list, right? Because CUDNN, the library for CUDA, is just provided through the form of a DLL, and it won't be discovered through the path. So when your CUDA tries to use CUDNN, it won't find it. So you need to make that a little extra change here and add that .dll to path ext in your stuff. All right, perfect. I believe that does it in terms of like CUDNN and everything. Cool. Perfect. All right, let's get a final. We're almost there. Let's get a final Anaconda prompt window. We are going to take it back to our workspace for Serpent.AI. So once again, I did say this earlier. I'm going to use this as an opportunity to repeat it. The folder, the directory that you, CD, the folder that you actually like perform your pip install Serpent.AI and your Serpent setup, that will be your workspace for Serpent, right? And don't try to run Serpent commands outside of this, because it's going to be missing some files. It's not going to be seeing some files in specific paths, right? So you don't want to run it outside. You want to do all your Serpent work from now on in whatever folder or directory you decided to run that Serpent setup in. All right, conda activate Serpent. All right, and then it tells us once we've done all the steps here, including adding .dll to your path ext, it says to finally perform. We're going to add some new steps to this. We're going to go beyond the wiki in preparation for the new release. All right, we're going to do Serpent Setup Ml, which is the final module that we have here. And it's going to say, hey, read the wiki first, right? Because otherwise people don't read the wiki. So yeah, and then you proceed, and then it asks you a bunch of questions. Which backend do you plan to use for TensorFlow, GPU or CPU? We are going to say GPU, enter. And then it's going to pick the right version. But not really. You'll see. You'll see, it's interesting. So 9.0, I believe, does not work with the 1.40 that we're installing with Serpent.AI. And it's really like just a TensorFlow CUDA, like clusterfuck, really. You have to understand that. It's not necessarily like Serpent.AI that's trying to make it hard. So typically that latest release of Serpent.AI would install TensorFlow GPU 1.4.0, but that is compiled against CUDA 8 and not CUDA 9, right? So we're going to still do all this installation process because a lot of the other libraries, the side libraries, are useful for us. But once it's done, all right, and then we could check, like Serpent modules. It's like, hey, guy, look at that. You have everything. Awesome. Now here's the funny part. We are going to uninstall, all right? So once everything's done, we are going to pip uninstall TensorFlow GPU. Are we like, yeah, we're yes, indeed. And we are going to go for a specific version instead. That's a slightly higher version. So Serpent.AI, the current release, like freezes it to 1.4. But since 9.0 is going to be the best choice for future compatibility, we are going to overwrite the TensorFlow version with something else. So 1.5, you can go with other stuff. You can go with, like 1.7, 1.8. But 1.5.1, in my opinion, strikes the perfect balance at the moment of this video, at least, between compatibility with like libraries and implementations that people have for deep learning, and also like compatibility with your system, right? So what we're going to go for instead is pip install TensorFlow GPU, and we're going to lock it with an equal 1.5.1. All right, so that's what we're going to install instead. That's the extra little step. It should still install just fine because of all the other steps that we did. Now we're going to be wanting to test TensorFlow real quick after that. Notice that if you've been watching the entire video and following along and maybe pausing or fast forwarding when we're installing, there haven't been any errors. And that's what I'm trying to emphasize sometimes when I say like Serpent.AI is not as hard as people imagine to get working with all the modules, right? If you follow the wiki and are aware of the gotchas and pay attention and don't try to take shortcuts, you're very, 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 very likely to come out on the other side with a win and no issues, right? Which is why it's a little, I would say it's a little, well, sad sometimes when people encounter a lot of install issues, because you know that technically if you follow everything and you pay attention in the wiki, it should be really, really relatively flawless, unless you have like conflicting like system, for example, like configurations or something like that. All right, so we did install TensorFlow. We're going to test it. We're going to get IPython real quick. And the way you test it, because just installing TensorFlow GPU with pip is not enough to know that it works, right? You only know that it works when you import TensorFlow, because then it will try to initialize CUDA. It will try to use CUDNN to make sure it's in place, and that's where it would blow up. Did I do something stupid? Just as I was bragging, I love this. Just as I was bragging about like having no issues. Let's see, pip freeze. TensorFlow GPU is there, so I don't know why it's not. That's weird. Unless IPython is not using the right Python. It should import tensor. Interesting. Interesting. Did we pip install upgrade IPython? Maybe we have an older version. I think it's hilarious that I just bragged about like having zero issues. Where we are in the Serpent module, that's where we also installed our TensorFlow GPU, and we can also verify that it is in the list of when we pip freeze. So interesting that it would not find it with IPython. Is it just a matter of? Okay, now it finds it. I don't know what happened there. That's weird. And if this blows up, then you messed up, essentially. You got the wrong version. So just a pointer, it's totally possible that it happens. You don't need to feel bad. If it actually blows up when you do import TensorFlow, you probably don't have the right version of CUDA and CUDNN for that version of TensorFlow, right? So what you can do is, and this is definitely beyond the scope of just Serpent.AI, but what you can do is Google, or just search for the proper combinations for whatever version of TensorFlow GPU you're trying to install, right? So for 1.5.1, you want to have CUDA 9.0, and you want to have libcudnn 7.05, right? Now, so now that is good. That is good. We could technically use any sort of model that works using TensorFlow as its backend. We're gonna go the extra mile, however. Because technically we've reached the end. Congratulations. Every module is in place. Every module is functioning at this point. You have everything that is required to be working with Serpent.AI. Like anything I do on the channel, like with the experiments and everything, you're not missing out on any of that. You have access to all of this at this point. However, to future-proof, we are gonna go to pytorch.org. That is not part of the wiki, but we are gonna go through those steps, okay? So you go to pytorch.org, because some of the stuff that's coming up in new versions has been implemented with a PyTorch backend. So it's not part of this, the setup when you do Serpent Setup ML. It will be in the next version, but if you're watching the video where it's not the case, what you want to do is go to pytorch.org. You're going to pick Windows as your OS, Conda as your package manager, because we are using Anaconda, Python 3.6, CUDA 9.0, and it's going to give you a command here, a conda command, and you want to make sure to run that in your environment, your Serpent environment here. Okay, I guess we don't want to do, okay. I guess we can copy paste properly. Let's go. No, we don't, that's not something we know how to do. Okay. I mean, you guys see it right now. I'm not crazy. Oh, there you go. Finally. All right. So conda install pytorch CUDA 9.0-c pytorch. That's the command he gave us with the options. We're gonna make sure to install pytorch also alongside TensorFlow. Right. And it's a big package, almost 600 megabytes. We're gonna have to wait for the install, and that is gonna be the last thing. So like I said, currently not part of the wiki, currently not part of the release at the time of this video. However, in preparation, like I said, for the next release of Serpent.AI, it will be good to have this in place. So all of the dev that I do right now on the the dev branch of the framework, I am using PyTorch as a backend for the most part. Right, so it's going to be good to have this in place. We are almost there. And notice that it took a while to install, but it's just mostly waiting for installs to perform and downloads. It is really not that bad. Not once during this video did I panic and that's how confident I am. And this what I was doing here today, like on this video, is technically terrifying. So it speaks volume of the I guess the confidence in the install process that I have at this point in the life of the framework. Because there's so many things that could technically go wrong, but I mean, I think we've perfected over the last year the install process, so that it is very, very free of issues, I would say. Because technically, you're setting up a lot of very, very, you know, like large and complex dependencies to have your stuff working. So you have a fully, technically, like after this, even if you ditch Serpent.AI, which I would not recommend, but if you do, for whatever reason, you still have a very, very functional deep learning or reinforcement learning setup on your box, right? You have CUDA, you have TensorFlow, you have PyTorch, and all sorts of other stuff, right? So you're kind of good to go. You're going to be in a good position. All right, so PyTorch is there. How do we test this? We're going to go back to IPython. We're going to say import torch. If that is working fine, we are done. So congratulations. I am not going to do a sample project or anything like this. The video is already plenty long as it is. So we're not going to add any extra content. However, like I said, any future video that we're going to come up with on the channel, tutorials and guides and, you know, like sample projects and things like that, we're going to require this video as a prerequisite. So I'm going to make sure, like, we're going to need everyone to have at least like what we did today done on their machine before we proceed with the projects, right? But that has been it. Serpent.AI is fully installed. You can run Serpent, get all the commands. You can run Serpent modules at this point to confirm that all your extra modules are working. We tested that TensorFlow and PyTorch are also working fine. We installed CUDA, and everything's good. Everything's good.